Well, the link between homicides of women and what I was talking about. I mean, perhaps there's a link to be made there. I mean, I might make a link between Bill C6 on conversion therapy, which is a bill that could be passed quickly if our conservative friends were willing to accept it. That's what I would say.
My members, déclaration de député. L'honorable député de Davenport.
Madam Speaker, my riding of Davenport is home to the largest Portuguese community in Canada, and I am proud to stand up in the House of Commons today, the official day of Portugal, Camões, and the Portuguese communities, and to celebrate it during the month of June, which we all know is now recognized nationally as Portugal Heritage Month. Due to COVID, we have to celebrate differently this year, but one day soon, hope to engage in activities surrounded by a sea of red and green, filled with twirling rancho dancers and bandas proudly marching with their instruments. I want to thank all the Portuguese leaders, clubs, associations, and media who've tirelessly promoted the love of Portuguese culture, language, and community to all Canadians. So whether you're ordering a meal from a favorite churrascaria, listening to some fado, watching Ronaldo in the World Cup, or having a glass of excellent Douro or Alentejo wine, take the time to celebrate Portugal this month. Viva Portugal and Viva Canada. Obrigada, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Yorkton Melville. The honourable member for Yorkton Melville. The honourable member for Malpeque.
Madam Speaker, I rise to honour the life of Ed Trubinsky of Cornwall, PEI, who passed away last month. Ed, a veteran, served for 42 years in Canada's armed forces, joining at age 16. His postings were all over the world, including Germany, Cyprus, and as an NCO at the Canadian Embassy in Tehran during the 1979 Iran hostage crisis. His medal rack was full of international honors, too many to name. A 1982 posting brought him to CFB Summerside, and he never left the island for work again, spending the rest of his career at Veterans Affairs and Foreign Affairs, retiring in 2003. Following retirement, his passion became helping to deliver medical humanitarian aid to destinations like Cuba, sometimes several times a year with not just tourists. Even a hefty generator delivered to Haiti. Ed could cajole substantial medical supply donations and even get a break from the airlines. Thank you, Ed, for your service. We salute you. Condolences to Lynn and family.
The honourable member for Yorkton Melville.
Speaker, Canadians cherish our books of remembrance as a way for those not able to visit a final resting place to pay their respects to our fallen men and women in uniform. In 2005, a seventh book was dedicated to those who died in the service of Canada during the Cold War. At Veterans Committee, we heard from retired Major James McMullen, who served our country for 38 years and spent more than 10 years of his retirement visiting and documenting every military cemetery in Europe with Canadians who were posted, died, and buried since October 147. Shockingly, his records indicate that 396 individuals buried outside of Canada, 3/4 of those who died, have not been included in the seventh Book of Remembrance. Mr. McMullen's appeal to the Government of Canada to ensure all names are memorialized has fallen on deaf ears. In memory of Canada's Cold War contribution and those who never returned home, the government should admit an error was made and ensure that those who died as a result of their service will forever be remembered, lest we forget.
The honourable member for Montarville. Mr. Speaker, the town of Saint-Basile-le-Grand, which is one of the municipalities in Montarville, is now celebrating the 150th anniversary of its foundation. Indeed, Basile Degnaud was leader of a community that took steps to create their own parish, which was created in 1870, and 1 year later, the municipality was incorporated. We would like to thank the various efforts made to pay tribute to this man who played an important role in the community and who became the first mayor of that new community. Saint-Basile-le-Grand will be celebrating its 150th anniversary with a great deal of programming, despite the current health situation. I think all the inhabitants of the community will be so happy to celebrate after these months of lockdown. I'd like to wish them a wonderful 150th anniversary. The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellan. Since 2015, our federal government has chosen to invest in infrastructure throughout Canada. This investment will guarantee that our communities can develop. And Laval and my riding, Alfred Pellan, have greatly benefited from this. There's been $1 million for a natural gas refueling station, $1 million for the Centre d'Exploration in the Rivière des Mille-Îles Park, $8 million for Montmorency College, $45 million for the Laval Transportation Corporation, $85 million for Pius 9 Bridge, and $260 million for Highway 19. Thanks to these investments, our government is showing its commitment to being a partner in projects that support our Laval community in partnership with the town of Laval. We will continue to remain a partner for Alfred Pellan and a partner for all inhabitants of Laval. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Grand Prairie Mackenzie.
Mr. Speaker, freedom to speak is a cornerstone of a free society. Bill C-10 threatens that freedom and opens the door for the government to be able to decide what is acceptable speech and what is unacceptable. Democracy rests on the rights of a free people to speak freely and to freely debate and decide what are good ideas and what are bad ideas. I trust Canadians to engage in robust debates and wisely seek out truth without the government looking over their shoulders. But it is no wonder that it's this government, whose entire philosophy is based on weak and faulty ideas, that is trying to ram this legislation through before an election. But Canadians will not be silenced, and they know that C-10 is simply an attempt to limit their ability to challenge those in power. I will continue to fight against the passage of this flawed and dangerous legislation. Attempts to silence Canadians is wrong, and I will continue to fight and defend the rights of Canadians to freely challenge those in power.
The Honourable Member for Parkdale High Park.
Mr. Speaker, my wife and I have 2 boys, and like many racialized families, we try to teach our sons to be proud of their South Asian heritage. We encourage them to wear traditional clothing, so on religious occasions like Eid, the kurta pajamas come out. I often thought that the worst outcome for parents like us would be that your kids might grow up embarrassed of their heritage. But after the attack in London, I realized that the worst fear is that your kids might actually be scared about their heritage. The vigil this week, after a terrorist filled with Islamophobic rage killed a Muslim family simply because of their faith, we heard about young kids who are now asking, "Mom, do I look too Muslim?" No Muslim should be afraid to dress how they choose, to fear that visibly manifesting their religion makes them a target for lethal violence. Yet this is the legacy of the London attack. We need to call out anti-Muslim sentiment by name, Islamophobia. We need to call out politically motivated violence for what it is, terrorism. We need to work to address the root cause of this hatred. Radicalization online. That is the work I'm committed to, and I urge all of my colleagues in this chamber to join me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Mr. Speaker, in June, we celebrate Portuguese Heritage Month, a great time to recognize and celebrate the contributions of Canadians of Portuguese descent. And today, June 10th, is Portugal Day, commemorated both in Portugal and around the world by Portuguese, in honor of the 16th century poet Luís Vaz de Camões, whose prose captured Portugal's age of discovery. It's a special day of pride for me, both as a Portuguese Canadian and as a resident of Mississauga, a city with over 20,000 Luso-Canadians. Canada is now home to one of the largest Portuguese diasporas in the world, with nearly 500,000 people of Portuguese origin calling Canada home. This past year has been very difficult. Personally, I've seen many losses within our Luso community, here and back in Portugal. We know we are all in this together, much stronger and closer than ever before. Again, to our Luso community, Feliz Dia de Portugal, Viva Canada, Viva Portugal, Obrigado, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Carlton Trail Eagle Creek.
Yesterday, Alberta and TC Energy announced the devastating news of the official termination of the Keystone XL project. Canada's oil and gas industry has long been a sector which has fostered economic growth and prosperity for thousands of hardworking Canadians, generating tax revenues which support social programs and infrastructure like schools and hospitals. However, a guilty pleasure of this Liberal government is watching the destruction of this industry, which is, after all, this Prime Minister's goal. Liberals shower the industry and its workers with empty praise while implementing policies that serve to hasten its demise. Western Canadians deserve the security and dignity that comes with a secure, stable, and well-paying job. Canada's Conservatives will secure the future and enact a comprehensive jobs plan to get Canadians back to work in the oil and gas sector and in every other industry in Canada.
The Honourable Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, as we talk infrastructure during Canada's Infrastructure Week, it is not just about building roads and bridges. It's about investing in infrastructure that builds strong communities across the country and delivers a better quality of life for Canadians. That's why the Government of Canada announced a historic $10.4 billion investment for 4 shovel-ready public transit projects in the GTA, including the Yonge North Subway extension. These investments support strong cities and respect transit decisions made by local decision makers based on what is best for their communities. Our York Region Liberal Caucus, since the onset, advocated for the Yonge North Subway extension, and the government listened, with this $5.6 billion transformational project set to benefit over 1.2 million York Region residents. Mr. Speaker, we're making sure that every dollar invested in infrastructure counts, creating good jobs and growing the economy post-COVID-19, tackling climate change, and building more inclusive communities for all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This pandemic has exposed global vulnerabilities to biological threats and shown that progress in biotechnology could be exploited for hostile ends. That's why security breaches at Winnipeg's National Microbiology Lab must not be ignored. 2 scientists were fired from this lab after the Canadian Security Intelligence Service recommended that their clearances be revoked. Chinese military scientists were granted access to work in the lab, and deadly viruses were transferred from this lab to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. These national security concerns must be explained. The government was ordered to provide critical documents to the Canada-China Committee, but has refused to do so. Instead, to avoid accountability, the Prime Minister submitted them to a committee that he controls and can subsequently silence. This was not his decision to make. The Prime Minister must abide by the will of Parliament. Canada's national security depends upon it.
The Honourable Member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, the release today of the Ethics Committee's report into the WE scandal shows how comfortable the Liberals are with unethical and corrupt behaviour. It shows in detail how the Prime Minister gave $500 million contract to the WE charity. This is an organization run by well-connected Liberals that paid over $500,000 in fees and expenses to the Prime Minister's families. It paid $20,000 to fly the Prime Minister's wife abroad for their event and spent over $10,000 to produce and promote campaign-style advertising for the Prime Minister. The amount of financial and in-kind benefit that the Prime Minister and his family have received from WE is outrageous. These facts and the appearance of a clear conflict of interest on top of the Billionaires Island scandal, the SNC-Lavalin scandal, and the illegal casino magnate scandal, among others, Mr. Speaker, have been severely damaging to Canadians' confidence in their democratic institutions. Canadians deserve better, and they can count on Conservatives to secure accountability.
The Honourable Member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
Mr. Speaker, according to the Women's National Housing and Homelessness Network, homelessness amongst women, girls, and gender-diverse peoples in Canada is a crisis hiding in plain sight. They explain the extent of the problem is difficult to fully understand due to the hidden nature of their homelessness and the way women tend to avoid traditional shelters and other options, since these spaces tend to be dominated by men. That puts women in precarious scenarios as they rely on relational and potentially dangerous supports when what they really need is a system that understands their needs and a housing policy that prioritizes them. Le réseau identifie 8 défis et
The network identifies 8 challenges and opportunities that could end homelessness among women, girls, and gender-diverse people. It believes that these obstacles can't be overcome.
Housing strategy funds for the unique needs of women and girls, it is critical that responses to homelessness amongst women, girls, and gender-diverse peoples are urgently prioritized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, Jacques Parizeau is a monument in Quebec's history. He was one of the main figures in the Quiet Revolution, and he played a central role in the nationalization of electricity, as well as the creation of the Régie des Rentes du Québec, the Société Générale de Financement, and the Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec. Then, after having been perhaps the greatest Minister of Finance in the history of Quebec, Jacques Parizeau, in 1994, became Premier of Quebec as leader of the Parti Québécois, and he came within a few thousand votes of finally giving Québécois their own country. People called him Monsieur, and he was a great Monsieur. He was a statesman, devoted to public service. He was a monument. And that is what the Jacques Parizeau Fund of the Greater Montreal Foundation wants to offer him, a monument in the gardens of the National Assembly with other great premiers. I would invite all Québécoises and Québécois to go on the site of the Greater Montreal Foundation and contribute to the Jacques Parizeau Fund so that Monsieur gets a tribute worthy of the recognition of his country, Quebec.
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
Incidents of anti-Semitism are on the rise in Canada, and the incidents speak for themselves. The annual audit of anti-Semitic incidents showed that for the 5th straight year, Canada has set a record in 2020 with 2,600 incidents, an increase of more than 18%. Another report showed that there were 50 incidents of anti-Semitic activity in the GTA in May alone, a 5-fold increase over the previous few months. A 21-year-old girl in Montreal stated, "I felt like I'm going to have to hide the fact that I was born in Israel for the rest of my life living in Canada. It is that frightening." She said that after being pelted with rocks. Anti-Semitism is in the rise across Canada, and this type of activity cannot be tolerated. So why is the Liberal Party offering safe harbor to someone who described Israel as a state of apartheid? Why is the Prime Minister accepting and welcoming anti-Semitic activity within his own caucus?
The Honourable Member for Brossard-Saint-Lambert. Mr. Speaker, today, everywhere where there are people with Portuguese origins, Portugal Day is being celebrated. What we are celebrating is everything that has formed Portuguese culture over the centuries. Not military conquests, not even so-called discoveries. We're celebrating all elements of Portuguese history, azulejos, cartography, a symbiotic relationship with the oceans, and a very tasty use of the ocean's treasures. Portuguese culture is very well represented by Pastéis de Natas, but it also is the source of fertile and world-renowned literature, from Camões to Fernando Pessoa, as well as Fado, which rocks us from the cradle to the tomb, as well as simple but delicious gastronomy with spices discovered in the 16th century, as well as a judicious use of sea salt. To be Lusitanian, or either in Portugal or elsewhere in the world, means living out your best life without suffering too much from saudade. Thank you.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister suggested that the breach at the Winnipeg lab was espionage, but later he wouldn't confirm it. Canadians are getting a little tired of the shell game that the Liberal government is playing with our national security. Will the government confirm that espionage by Communist China was taking place at the Winnipeg laboratory? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition is playing a very dangerous game. As the Prime Minister has stated, we have provided the documents that they asked for to the Canada-China Committee with protections in place for privacy and national security. We then went further and provided unredacted documents to the only committee that has members with security clearance as well as the right safety protocols. Mr. Speaker, I suggest the member opposite go back to his conspiracy theory drawing board.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's sad to see the political games and cover-ups that member and the government is willing to go to with respect to a breach at our Level 4 biosecurity lab in Winnipeg. This is a lab working with the deadliest viruses in the world. You need 2 security clearances to work at that lab, and a security breach of that nature is catastrophic, Mr. Speaker, and Canadians have questions. We don't need cover-ups from a parliamentary secretary. We need to know, will the government follow the order of this Parliament and disclose to all Canadians the nature of their security breach?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, only the leader of the opposition consider the fact that our government has provided all of the documents unredacted in a secure manner to be somehow a cover-up. Mr. Speaker, either the member opposite doesn't understand national security or he simply doesn't care. But Mr. Speaker, we have provided those documents. We have faith in the hard-working members of NSICOP and the Secretariat that support them to be able to do this work, to provide that transparency while maintaining the safety and security of our national security systems in Canada.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'm disappointed in the Parliamentary Secretary. She should know that I take the national security of our country extremely seriously, which is why I served 12 years in the Canadian Armed Forces, and which is why I'm concerned that there's been an infiltration at the top lab in Canada. Yesterday, one of Canada's top security experts said that Chinese agents had infiltrated the lab under the watch of this Liberal government. We know that the lab's director resigned shortly after this breach. Parliament has a responsibility to examine a failure of this nature. Why is that member continuing to cover up a failure to protect Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if the leader of the opposition cares about national security, he has a pretty funny way of showing it. But Mr. Speaker, we have provided all of the documents unredacted to NSICOP. And Mr. Speaker, since the member opposite referenced his service, let me point out a quote from a professor from the Royal Military College of Canada in reference to the work of NSICOP. And they said, quote, "I think it demonstrates the value of having an independent review of organizations by parliamentarians of the changes that the government has put in place. I think the NSICOP report is very important for everyone to read. NSICOP is respected."
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président, hier...
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister implied that the breach at the Winnipeg lab was connected to espionage, but didn't want to confirm it. The Liberals have always been about hiding information. Will the Liberal government confirm that spying by Communist China did take place at the Winnipeg lab? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, only the leader of the opposition thinks that the government providing all of the documentation unredacted, as well as the documentation in a secure form to 2 separate committees is somehow a cover-up. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader is playing a dangerous game with national security matters for his own political stunts. We will not engage in that. We have the faith of the hard-working members of NSICOP. I know just how hard they work. I was a member, and I also understand the security measures that go in place to ensure that members have the right security clearance and documents are held in a sense.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Canadians deserve a serious answer to a serious issue. The Winnipeg lab is the highest level of security. That means they work with the most deadly viruses in the world. It's been a disaster for this government to have a security breach of this nature. It's very, very serious, Mr. Speaker. Is this government trying to hide its own failure to protect Canadians? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what is sad, or what Canadians deserve, is a leader of the opposition who doesn't put the national security of Canadians at risk for a political stunt based on his own innuendo and conspiracy theories. Mr. Speaker, we have provided all of the documents. I don't know how many times the government has to say that, in a manner that is safe and secure, unredacted. But to those members, and Mr. Speaker, I don't know why the leader doesn't have confidence in his own members on the NSICOP committee to review this material.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, Quebec should be wary of Bill C-30. The federal government is using it to relaunch the Pan-Canadian Securities Regulator. If established, this regulator would wipe out Montreal's financial sector in favour of Toronto. That's why Quebec has opposed it for 40 years and why the National Assembly has passed 4 unanimous resolutions against it. In C-30, the Bloc has managed to cut the funding for the office tasked with creating this regulator, but the Liberals are trying everything they can to bring it back through an amendment. The vote could be Monday. Will the Liberals respect the unanimous wish of Quebec and withdraw their amendment? The Honourable Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question. With respect, I disagree with his characterization of the funding designated for the Canadian Securities Transition Office. That organization cooperates with willing partners at the provincial level on securities regulation and on other important matters, including tax evasion. It is the government's view that this organization does good work, but I would point out that provinces that do not wish to cooperate with the CSTO are not forced to in any way, shape, or form, and I look forward to the debate on that proposed amendment.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, Quebec's economic nationalism is at stake with C-30. We need a strong Quebec-based financial regulator to protect our headquarters, support the growth of our companies, and for everything to be done in French. We're the 13th largest financial centre in the world in Montreal. That's what the federal government wants to destroy by centralizing activities in Toronto. The Bloc also managed to cut funding to the office tasked with creating this securities regulator, this single regulator. The Liberals are trying everything they can to bring it back with an amendment to C-30. Will they withdraw that amendment? The Quebec business circles are watching. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me just reinforce this essential point. The Canadian Securities Transition Office in no way, shape, or form impacts the jurisdiction of Quebec to manage its own securities regulation. They are free to behave in the way that they deem fit. It's an opportunity for provinces who wish to cooperate on important issues, not just securities regulation, but also on money laundering and tax evasion and other important financial matters. This organization does important work for the benefit of all Canadians, and to the extent that Quebec wishes to pursue an independent process to achieve those outcomes, it is free to do so, and this amendment will not change that.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont La Petite Patrie. With the We Charity scandal, we know what we have to do with the Liberals now. Take them by the hand. We have to tell them, no, it's not okay to only think about the interests of your ultra-rich cronies. No, it's not okay. We Charity had privileged access to the finance minister. What a bunch of kids. You have to tell them everything. Otherwise, they can't control themselves and they'll start acting up again. Joking aside, will the Liberals commit to implementing all the recommendations in the report released by the Ethics Committee this morning? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we respect our parliamentary institutions, including independent officers of Parliament, such as the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner. We also appreciate the work of committees. The opposition seems to be focused on playing partisan politics during a pandemic rather than focusing on the needs of Canadians. Today, we could have been debating the Implementation Act to actually bring about measures that would extend interest on student loans, that would waiving interest on student loans, as well as extend rent and wage subsidies as examples. We appreciate their work. I look forward to reading the report and getting back to the member.
The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government spent a year stalling, filibustering, even shutting down Parliament, but they haven't been able to hide the fact that the We scandal did not come from the civil service. The scheme was politically driven by key political ministers to help their friends, the Kielburger brothers. In an unprecedented economic crisis, the Prime Minister turned key government departments into an open bar for his friends and cronies, and they in turn hired his relatives and flew his family and the finance minister around the world. This goes to the Prime Minister. During the WE scandal, Canadian students and the taxpayers were the losers. When is he going to clean up the ethical mess in Ottawa and within his own ministries and his own cabinet?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Commissioner had investigated the matter, and his report clears the Prime Minister of all allegations. And that, let me go directly from the report on page 3. And I'm quoting, the Prime Minister did not contravene subsection 6(1), section 7, or section 21 of the Act. And further, on page 3, the Commission writes, and I quote again, there is no evidence of impropriety in relation to the Prime Minister's decision-making in relation to this matter. And the Commissioner's conclusion on page 40, and I quote again, I cannot conclude that a contravention has occurred. That's it.
L'honorable député de Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord.
The honourable member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, our court system and procedures have to be impartial, non-biased, and above all, non-partisan. However, the use of liberalist in the judicial appointment system is a huge source of concern. According to the French CBC, a former Liberal staffer back in 2019 himself said that it was the stuff of scandal. For once, a Liberal was apparently right. How are Canadians supposed to maintain their confidence in our court system? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, when our government was elected in 2015, we implemented a more serious and responsible system for appointing judges of the highest caliber. And the system is merit-based. It's based on the expertise of various candidates and recommendations of various advisory bodies. We are proud of those who've been appointed since this system was implemented, which come from diverse horizons and backgrounds. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, once again, the Liberal government is fixing its mistakes only after they've been exposed. With the partisan Liberal list, the government could favor candidates who support the Liberal Party. The Justice Minister said that he was the only one. He alone made the recommendations, but we know that PMO took part in the screening. Why did the minister insist that the recommendations came from him alone when that wasn't true? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I spoke of our transparent and serious process that has been used to screen some 400 applications, and the system is unprecedented. Among those appointed under the new process since 2015, 50% are women, 11% are visible minorities, 6% identify as LGBT, 3% as Indigenous, and 2% are people with disabilities. That shows how effective our new system is, and we will continue to ensure that it is serious, transparent, and merit-based.
Thousand Islands and Frito Lakes.
We heard the parliamentary secretary give a lot of stats there. How about 25% of the judges that they've appointed are Liberal donors? They keep parroting the same tired talking points. But we know the higher your donations, the better your chance of finding yourself on the bench with this Liberal government. Now they're saying they'll only use public databases to vet these appointments, where, surprise, Liberal donation records can still be found. When will this Liberal Justice Minister start appointing judges based on merit and merit alone?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what we have done is taken significant steps to create a better process for appointing judges, one that ensures that our judiciary reflects the country that it serves. Let's be clear, all judicial appointments are made by merit. There are no partisan considerations in the decision-making process. In fact, when we formed government, we removed the partisanship that was in place under the Harper government and brought in a more independent and a more rigorous process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Yeah, the parliamentary secretary must be talking about how rigorously they check their Liberal donation database, because that's what reports are telling us today. They have to stop using Liberal lists because that's how they've been making their selections. The Justice Minister said, quote, "There is no partisanship in my decision-making process." Quote, "Well, an internal Liberal donation database seems to be quite partisan." So when the PMO is vetting and the PMO is approving and top Liberals have their fingers on the scale, we have a problem. Did the Justice Minister willingly mislead the House when he decided to cover up the Liberals' partisan appointment process?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me reiterate the process that we have in place. It is rigorous, it is transparent, and it has resulted in the nomination of more than 400 jurists. And let's talk about having the administration of justice held up into high repute. That comes when you have a set of jurists that reflect the litigants that come before it. Who have we appointed? We've appointed, since 2016, 55% female candidates, 11% racialized candidates, 6% of candidates have been appointed are LGBTQ2, 3% are Indigenous, and 1% are persons with a disability. That reflects the Canada that we hope all jurists will serve. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Yeah, well, Mr. Speaker, 100% of them were put through the Liberals' partisan database and checked for how much they donated. But today we've seen that after months of filibusters, witness blocking, and document sealing, the Ethics Committee was finally able to table its report on the WE scandal. The report clearly outlines the depth of corruption and cronyism with this Liberal government. Liberal insiders have unfettered access to government, and they'll always help their friends to jump the queue and get the inside track. Canadians deserve a government that will serve them instead of the Liberal elite. So will this corrupt government start putting the interests of Canadians first and implement the recommendations outlined in that report?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we respect the work of committees. We also respect the role of the independent officers of Parliament who do their work independently and free from partisan political consideration. And while the Conservatives remain focused on weak charity, our focus remains on delivering Canadians, delivering important bills for Canadians, including those bills that we're discussing today. But what did the Conservatives try to do, Mr. Speaker? They tried to shut down Parliament. They said, it's over. We don't want to work anymore, Mr. Speaker. Well, if you don't want to get out of there and let us work for Canadians.
The honourable member for Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Well, I'd like to number all of the hours that that minister's Liberals have filibustered committee, including dozens and dozens of hours at the Ethics Committee. This report shows widespread Liberal insider access and corruption. It's undeniable. These Liberals used the pandemic to line the pockets of Liberals and their well-connected friends. They tried to cover it up, they tried to block investigations, and they tried to tamper with witnesses. Corruption and these Liberals go hand in hand. So what will it take for this government to stop the corruption and commit to good ethical governance? The minister says he respects the work of committees. Will he commit right now to implementing their recommendations?
The honourable minister.
Well, that's a bit rich, Mr. Speaker, coming from a member that doesn't respect the work of Parliament. We are meeting here today to discuss a very important bill, Mr. Speaker. And what did these members and his friends do on the other side? They tried to shut down Parliament. They said, we're finished working for the day. We're going to go home. That's unacceptable, Mr. Speaker. We need to keep Parliament open and debate those important bills like C6, like C12, like C30, like that. We have to do that for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, in the wake of the tragic events in London, the leader of the Bloc Québécois took the floor and called for an end to hatred and violence. Our leader called for greater solidarity, love, and fraternity. The Prime Minister, though, seems to prefer division, and he made a sneaky comparison, which is particularly unfortunate in the current circumstances, a comparison between intolerance, Islamophobia, and Quebec's secularism law. Will the Prime Minister withdraw these remarks, which are far more divisive than inclusive? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers are defending their rights before the courts. We are continuing to monitor the situation closely. Our position is clear and well known. It's important to note that the Government of Canada is not a party to the litigation. The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister, in answer to a question from the member for Lac-Saint-Jean, said, and I quote, "I would highly encourage members of the Bloc Québécois to listen to the Muslim community who are expressing certain concerns about what they are currently experiencing in Quebec," unquote. In a context where we all need to stand together, this is starting to look like apples to oranges. There's no link between Bill 21 and the tragedy in London. And making such a connection is irresponsible. Will the Prime Minister withdraw his remarks? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I said, we can see that Quebecers are currently defending their rights before the courts. We continue to monitor the situation closely. Our position on this is clear and well known, and it's important to continue to note that the Government of Canada is not a party to the litigation. The Honourable Member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, this apples to oranges comparison, we're not the only ones who can see through this. The National Assembly this morning passed the following resolution unanimously. The National Assembly strongly condemns all forms of hatred and violent crime. And we condemn some of the unfortunate comparisons that politicians and media in the rest of Canada are making between connections between what happened in London and a piece of Quebec legislation. Speaking of intolerance and Islamophobia in reference to Bill 21, under the current circumstances, is just such a comparison. Will the Prime Minister withdraw his remarks? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I already said, we see Quebecers defending their rights before the courts. We continue to follow the situation closely. Our position on this is clear and well known. It's important to note that the Government of Canada is not a party to the litigation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, 3 years ago, the government turned its back on a complaint according to which certain members of the Iraqi forces trained by Canadian troops had committed war crimes. They raped women, tortured and executed prisoners, and proudly showed videos of their crimes to Canadian soldiers. General Vance was informed of all of this twice, but the question has never been solved. The Minister has surely been made aware of this. Can he confirm that? The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, our government undertook to respect and defend human rights in all deployments and operations involving the Canadian forces. As the Minister said, those allegations are very troubling, and we will see to it that they are investigated in depth. We take seriously all incidents involving respect for human rights, and will take appropriate steps to resolve any issues that do come up. Thank you.
Lake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, in 2018, Canadian soldiers reported to commanders they saw horrible atrocities being committed on the phones of the very Iraqi soldiers they were training. But our troops were ordered to look the other way and to keep training these alleged war criminals. Now, we know a secret memo was given to the former Chief of Defense Staff in 2020, which clearly demonstrates that top defense officials in national defense knew there were serious problems with the security screening of Iraqi recruits. So why did these Liberals extend Operation Impact not once, but twice after learning we were training war criminals in Iraq?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is contributing to greater peace and security in the world and remains a strong partner in the fight against Daesh. We are committed to meeting our obligations under international and domestic law. The Canadian Armed Forces is no longer operating with the Iraqi security forces related to these allegations. Our government takes this very seriously. We are actively looking into these troubling allegations. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, Canadian soldiers are entrusted to embody the highest moral doctrine and uphold international humanitarian law. But in 2018, when Canadian soldiers training Iraqi troops witnessed horrific war crimes, they were told to ignore the evidence and carry on. The NATO training mission commander knew, the Canadian Joint Operations Commander knew, and General Vance knew, but they all failed to act. How could the Defense Minister do nothing in the face of something so serious?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, our government is committed to respecting and upholding human rights during all Canadian Armed Forces deployments and operations. As the minister has said, these allegations are extremely troubling, and we are ensuring that they are thoroughly investigated. We take all incidents regarding compliance with the law of armed conflict seriously and take proper actions to address any issues that arise. Thank you.
The member for London Fanshawe.
Another graduating class of students are finishing their school year, and yet again they are struggling to find work over the summer due to the pandemic, work that will help to pay for their overwhelming education costs. Many students will have to make some tough decisions about whether they can even afford school in the fall. This government continues to insist they are helping when the reality is they've only helped themselves, their friends, and those at the top. When will this government commit to permanently ending interest fees on federal student loans? And when will this government see education as more than just a moneymaker for their federal coffers?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for her question. I also want to assure her and reassure all Canadians that our government will remain focused on all Canadians, including students and youth. Today, we could have been debating waiving interest on student loans. We could have been extending the rent subsidy and wage subsidies. Yet we have the opposition, namely the Conservatives, playing political games. We will remain focused on delivering for Canadians, and that's why, exactly as the member's asking, waiving interest on student loans is in Budget 2021. It's within the Budget Implementation Act. I would encourage her to talk to her Conservative counterparts to get the debate.
The Honourable Member for St. John's East.
Speaker, yesterday the Public Safety Committee heard that the continued use of solitary confinement in Canadian prisons amounts to torture under international law. Black and Indigenous people are severely overrepresented in Canadian prisons as a result of more than a century of systemic racism and are therefore more likely to be subject to this torture. Lack of transparency, oversight and direction have allowed it to continue. It must stop. Torture must stop. Systemic racism must stop. When will this Liberal government end state-sponsored torture of Canadian citizens in our prisons?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And through the former Bill C-83, we are ending administrative segregation. We'll continue to work to further develop systems to serve our communities more equitably. And Mr. Speaker, we value the work performed by the independent external decision makers, which review inmate cases on an ongoing basis and issue decisions that are binding upon correctional services. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work to ensure that administrative segregation is ended and replaced by the legislation that we have brought forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Although day scholars were able to seek compensation under the Indian Residential Schools Settlement Agreement for physical and sexual abuse suffered while attending residential schools, they were not able to seek compensation for the experience of attending Indian residential schools because they returned to their homes at night. The Sechelt Indian Band and the Tecumloops Indian Band challenged this in court as two of the plaintiffs in the Gottfriedson Indian Residential Scholars class action. Yesterday, after a journey that took over a decade, our government announced that a settlement has been reached with the survivor and descendant class members in the class action. Can the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations update this House on this important milestone for day scholars?
The Honourable Minister.
I thank the member for his leadership and his advocacy. Yesterday's announcement, yes, does take us another step closer to bringing meaningful resolution and healing for day scholar survivors and their descendants. After years of advocacy, this agreement is a testament to the dedication, resilience, and their courageous efforts should be recognized. The agreement combines individual compensation for harms experienced in attending a residential school as a day scholar with investments to support healing, wellness, education, language, culture, heritage, and commemoration for survivors and descendants. This is an important step forward.
The Honourable Member for South Surrey, White Rocks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For many families in my riding, the dream of home ownership is just that, a dream. The Liberals answer the first-time home buyers incentive, which has been a failure and few Canadians are using it. The worst part is the latest idea to raise the program's max home price to $722,000. This is completely tone deaf and will obviously change nothing for my community. Mr. Speaker, do the Liberals know how much the average home in South Surrey and White Rock costs?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we have done a lot in the National Housing Strategy to ensure that Canadians are assisted with their housing needs. We introduced the first-time home buyer incentive, which will help families achieve the dream of home ownership. The Conservatives have never been leaders in affordable housing solutions for Canadians. They do not support the National Housing Strategy that is working. It's like choosing to swim across a crocodile-infested river because you don't want to use the bridge because you're scared of the bridge falling down, even though the bridge is working, in this case, the National Housing Strategy. It doesn't make sense, and Canadians see right through them.
The Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every day I hear heartbreaking stories from my constituents who have been separated from their families and loved ones by the lengthy and extended border closure with the United States. Some have missed family funerals, others cannot cross to look after their elderly parents or a sick family member. Grandparents are forfeiting precious time with their grandchildren. Nearly 15 months into this pandemic, no formal plans for the safe reopening of our border crossings have been announced. Does this Liberal government not care about the human impacts they are having on my constituents by their inaction?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, of course we care. Our entire government has been working throughout this pandemic to care for Canadians, to keep them safe throughout a global pandemic, which many of us have never seen before. Mr. Speaker, all of the measures that we have put in place have been done with the advice from scientists, experts, doctors, with the purpose of stopping the spread of COVID-19 and saving lives. Mr. Speaker, we made an important announcement yesterday in regards to lifting restrictions. We need Canadians to keep doing that hard work, keep getting vaccinated, and we will see life return to normal.
The Honourable Member for Caribou, Prince George.
Last week, the CRTC announced it will start consultations on a 3-digit national suicide prevention hotline. Mr. Speaker, we don't need more consultations. We don't need more inaction. Help should only be 3 digits away. This government could have introduced legislation immediately after passing our motion to bring 988 to Canada 6 months ago. They have the power to get this done right now. Instead, what they did is they passed the buck. They failed to act, and they passed it to CRTC. Why?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, nothing could be further from the truth. One of the first commitments we made in our mandate actually was additional supports for provinces and territories, specifically around mental health supports. This is something that we have been committed to not just throughout the pandemic, but every single day of our mandate, we have been working to help support the mental health needs of Canadians. It's something you've seen again, Mr. Speaker, in Budget 2021. We will continue to work in terms of creating a 3-digit mental health support line. But in the meantime, we won't take lessons from the Conservatives because we have been there every step of the way.
The Honourable Member for Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 181 days since we passed this motion. 181 days of inaction. 181 days. Mr. Speaker, every 24 hours, 11 Canadians die by suicide. A further 275 attempt. So, Mr. Speaker, using those numbers, In the 181 days, nearly 2,000 Canadians have died by suicide. A further 50,000 have attempted suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death of young children in Canada. Will this Liberal government commit to passing my bill C-94 294 today and help save lives, finally take action, and finally bring 988 to Canada? Yes or no?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we know that any life lost to suicide is one life too many. And this is precisely why we didn't just act in the last 188 days. We've acted over the last 5 years to bring the mental health supports and the investments that provinces and territories have asked for. We provided throughout the pandemic the funding needed to create wellnesstogether.ca. Over 1 million Canadians have accessed mental health supports that the member opposite flippantly misses, but this is real help, helping real Canadians access the help that they need. We're going to continue to invest more ways. We will not.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, we learned this morning from CBC that the Liberal government stopped using the Liberal Party database to vet judicial appointments. For years, the Bloc has demanded that very same thing. So naturally, Mr. Speaker, I thank the Minister for listening to us. But some issues remain. The appointment process is still not impartial because all the ministers, including the Prime Minister, have their say in the appointment process. The Liberals will no longer use the Liberal Party database, so much the better. Now they have to stop vetting the appointments amongst Liberals. When will the Minister implement an impartial appointment process? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, when our government was elected in 2015, we put in place a more rigorous, open and responsible process that reflects better the diversity of Canada. Our appointments are always based on merit. They are also based on the needs for expertise and the recommendations of the Independent Advisory Committee. We are proud of those who have been appointed since the beginning of the system. They come from different backgrounds and affiliations. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, the issue is not their competency, but rather the partisan judicial appointment process. The Bloc relishes its victory over the Liberal Party database, but that's just a first step. As long as the party in power can interfere in the process so that the faithful can rise to the highest rank, the credibility of the judicial system is under fire. The Liberals appoint Liberals, the Conservatives appoint Conservatives, and justice gets short shrift. Mr. Speaker, it has to stop. Will the Minister accept my offer to create a committee to recommend an impartial judicial appointment process? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the member opposite knows full well that the committees are master of their domain. They're independent and they make their own decisions. As such, we cannot decide that what a committee will study. This would force us. We appoint judges who are impartial and who reflect the diversity of Canada. Our government has appointed more than 400 exceptional jurists from all horizons and all political affiliations. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Échemins, Lévis. There are people in my riding who are not getting enough temporary foreign workers. The pandemic is on the decline, but the recovery is crucial. The temporary foreign workers is essential to the survival of small businesses, and it's a race to get them. When will the Minister of Immigration loosen the restrictions and harmonize the program with Quebec to accelerate the process so that people can work in our regions for our companies? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we work in close cooperation with our Quebec counterparts on this file and others. More than 34,000 temporary foreign workers have arrived in Canada, more than 4,000 in Quebec. We continue to provide the workers that Quebecers need to ensure their economic recovery.
Colombia.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has not had a softwood lumber agreement with the United States since the fall of 2015. and this government neglected to negotiate it into the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement. Hundreds of thousands of Canadian workers, many in Kootenay, Columbia, rely on the softwood lumber industry to put food on the table for their families. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister act to protect these jobs by removing the softwood tariffs?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me begin by saying unequivocally that the duties imposed by the U.S. on Canada's softwood lumber are both unwarranted and unfair. I've raised this issue at every opportunity possible, including with President Biden, with Ambassador Tai and the Commerce Secretary and Secretary Raimondo. As we have done always, we're going to vigorously defend our softwood industry as well as the hundreds of thousands of workers that they employ. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, the Red Deer Indian Industrial School was one of the first iterations of what would become the residential school system. Like residential schools, terrible things occurred there. According to records, 20% of the students who were sent there never made it home. The school was closed in 1919, and it isn't included in the list of 139 residential schools in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's findings. Can the government ensure that groups like the Remembering the Children Society will also be eligible for funding to find the unmarked graves that are believed to be at the site?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Addressing the historical harms committed against Indigenous children is a crucial step towards healing and justice for survivors, their families, and their communities. The Ursa, McLean, Godfredson, Anderson settlements represent historic milestones in Canada's efforts to address harms associated with attendance at federally operated educational institutions. We know that there are outstanding claims in other educational and care settings, and we're committed to collaborative discussions with both the provinces and the territories and those affected on how we foster the healing and make sure that they
The Honourable Member for Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel. Mr. Speaker, I had thought that all members in the House agreed that our artists allowed us to stay strong and connected throughout this pandemic. I was therefore upset to hear the member for Lethbridge say, and I quote, that arts funds go towards a very niche group of artists that are stuck in the early 1990s because they haven't managed to be competitive on new platforms. So they are very reliant on government grants in order to continue to exist. Can the Minister of Canadian Heritage tell us his opinion on these despicable comments from the Honourable Minister? Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel, for her continued support for the arts sector. The member for Lethbridge should apologize in the House for those shameful comments that she made outside the House, but also in this House, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are proud of our artists community, and we should celebrate them instead of denigrating them. Every day, our artists find more creative ways of giving hope to Canadians. We're talking about artists like Lise Dion, Yvon Deschamps, Claude Legault, who are, are they out-of-date artists? I don't think so, Mr. Speaker.
Trail Eagle Creek.
Mr. Speaker, here are the facts. Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor have been unjustly detained for years. The genocide of Uyghur Muslims continues. The erosion of Hong Kong freedoms is still happening. And military threats and provocations towards Taiwan are rampant. Can the Prime Minister give one reason why he still supports the location of Beijing in Communist China as the site for the 2022 Winter Olympics?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government is deeply concerned by reports of egregious human rights violations against Uyghurs and other minorities in the Xinjiang region. We have announced sanctions targeting individuals and entities implicated in the repression in coordination with like-minded democracies, and we'll continue to call for unfettered access to the region so independent investigations can report firsthand. That said, we must recognize the independence independence of the Canadian Olympic and Paralympic committees with regards to Canada's participation in the Games. The Minister of Heritage spoke to both organizations and informed them of the House of Commons vote regarding the situation in China.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government's trade relations with the United States are a shambles. No softwood lumber agreement. Canadian dairy sector under attack under the new NAFTA. Keystone has been cancelled. Line 5 is now in jeopardy. And now the Biden administration is threatening our livestock industry by reinstating the mandatory country of origin labeling program. Conservatives secured a softwood lumber agreement. We built pipelines, and we successfully ended coal at the WTO. With higher carbon taxes, Canadian farmers cannot afford another Liberal trade failure. Is this yet another mess by this Prime Minister that a Conservative government is going to have to clean up?
The Honourable Minister. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada and the U.S. share one of the biggest agricultural trading relationships in the world, with nearly $51 billion in agricultural trade in 2020. The WTO ruled in 2015 that mandatory coal measures in the U.S. discriminate against Canadian exporters, and we expect the U.S. to continue abiding by this ruling and its WTO obligations. Our government will continue to stand up for the Canada's beef industry, to the workers whose job it supports, and we firmly oppose any new proposals from the U.S. to resurrect mandatory country of origin label for beef or pork. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Richmond Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last month, a man was murdered in broad daylight outside of YVL. We have since learned that the victim had ties to gangs. Following the shooting, I, along with my colleague from Eastern Richmond East, asked the minister what steps he would be taking. Instead of targeting legal, law-abiding firearm owners, when will this government take action against dangerous and violent gang slayings taking place on the streets of Richmond and other communities across Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'm glad for the opportunity to remind this House that we have promised Canadians that we will strengthen gun control in this country. Well, of course, the Conservatives have promised to weaken it. But I would also point out to the member opposite that we actually provided $327 million to the provinces and territories to support law enforcement's efforts to do gun and gang investigations, including in her community. But she voted against that funding. We are also making monies available for communities to invest in kids and in their families in order to prevent this gun violence. And again, the member opposite voted against this. Mr. Speaker, our communities need more than tough talk. They need the support that we're providing.
The Honourable Member for Bonavista Buren Trinity.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard from many fish harvesters and industry stakeholders in my riding about the recent 3PS codfish management plan for the 2021-22 season. And while we know that the stock is facing challenges, it is a valuable resource for my riding and our many small rural communities and residents. Harvesters have expressed concerns with the scientific assessment model that is used for stock assessment and have called for a review of the science. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister of Fisheries, Oceans, Canada, and the Coast Guard explain the steps the government is taking in advance?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question and for his tireless advocacy on behalf of the hardworking fish harvesters in Bonavista Buren Trinity. Sustaining healthy and productive fisheries in which many communities depend on is a priority for this government, and we rely on the best available science when making management decisions. Support and confidence in science models and assessments used to determine stock health is critically important, particularly to those whose livelihoods will be impacted by the results and outcomes. And so we'll be convening a small group of scientists as requested by the industry to provide a consensus-based analysis of our assessment models for 3PS cod over the summer. We'll continue to consult with harvesters on the path forward for this.
The Honourable Member for Churchill Kiwetinook-Askey.
Mr. Speaker, the horrifying revelation of the 215 children found at Kamloops Residential School makes clear
Canada has committed genocide against Indigenous peoples. But the Prime Minister has failed to recognize this as genocide. He's not acted decisively to bring in international experts in genocide, such as the ICMP, as requested by Pimicikamak Cree Nation. Instead, the government is sending links for recycled grant applications. This is an insult. Why won't they take decisive action to bring in international experts to find these children victims of genocide and allow communities to bring their children home?
The Honourable Minister.
I thank the member for the question, and it has been very clear in call to action that communities must direct the research and the processes, the ceremonies, and using their customs. So it is really important that each of the communities is able to direct that research. Last night, we met with the National Centre on Truth and Reconciliation, and the only forensic pathologist that in the country that is Indigenous, and it has been very, very important that people have the tools to make those decisions and be able to bring their children home.
The Honourable Member for Don Valley East.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents and many civil society organizations would like to have a stronger governance mechanism to ensure Canada meets its climate goals. Bill C-12 is a step in the right direction. Canada is warming at double that of the rest of the world, and to date, Canada has not met its targets. With COP26 being held in Glasgow, can the minister advise whether he would institute a more regimented and independent governance structure for Bill C-12 as UK has done? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd certainly like to thank the member for the question and reiterate the government's commitment to taking strong and meaningful climate action. The Net Zero Accountability Act proposes a number of different accountability measures, but I would note that significant and meaningful amendments were made to the bill at committee, which include a 2025 review of our 2030 target and interim emissions reduction objective for 2026, enshrining the principle of progression for future targets, and codifying our new 2030 emissions reduction target of 40 to 45% below 2005. This is a landmark piece of legislation that will fundamentally alter how future governments report on progress towards our climate goal, and I certainly hope that the member will support us in moving this forward.
And that's all the time we have today. C'est tout le temps que nous avons.
That's all the time we have for oral questions. Point of order. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the member for Manicouagan asked the PM 3 times to apologize, and the parliamentary secretary responded three times with answers that had nothing to do with the question. These questions asked the Prime Minister to withdraw what he said for having mixed up two unrelated things. The parliamentary secretary responded with words that had nothing to do with it. So I would like to ask that I'm so sorry, but that is not. I must remind members that it is not up to the Speaker to determine whether questions or answers are of an appropriate quality. It is simply up to MPs' sense of honor when they are questioning or answering.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, were you calling on me?
Yes, I am. Please go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you seek it, I believe you will find unanimous consent for the following motion, that in the opinion of the House, the government must recognize what happened in Canada's Indian residential schools as genocide in accordance with Article 2 of the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which reads that any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, such as killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion will please say nay. Agree? Oh, we don't have unanimous consent, unfortunately. No, that's. We have another point of order. The honourable member for London Fanshawe. We have another point of order. The honourable member for London Fanshawe. Okay. Un autre appel au règlement, l'honorable député.
Another point of order. The honourable member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, there has been consultation between the parties, and I think if you seek it, you will find that there is unanimous consent to the following motion: that this House offer its deepest condolences to the family of Salman Afzal and Madia Salman, to friends and to the community of London following the tragedy of last Sunday. That this House strongly denounce all forms of hatred and violent crimes. That this House denounce the conflating issues between the events in London and a Quebec law.
Que tous ceux qui s'opposent à ce que l'on...
All those opposed to the honourable members moving the motion will please say nay.
Okay, nous n'avons pas le consentement unanime.
We do not have unanimous consent.
Now the weekly statement, la déclaration, les travaux de la Chambre, la déclaration hebdomadaire.
Now we have the Thursday statement. The Honourable Opposition House Leader. Thank you very much. I appreciate the speakers reminding me that it's Thursday. Well, I am very pleased to take on this very difficult task. Would my honourable counterpart be kind enough to inform the House of the business upcoming? The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague, who with great loyalty asks this question every Thursday. This afternoon, we will continue to debate the motion regarding the extension of sitting hours. Then we will move to report stage on Bill C-30 on the budget. We will continue that debate tomorrow. On Monday, we will resume third reading debate of Bill C-6 on conversion